I'm Haley, and today we're going to be reviewing Stranger Things Season 4. I'm going to skip the usual non-spoiler summary, mostly just because if you're 4 seasons in, you probably don't need a non-spoiler summary. I want to start by talking about the characters, as I always do, and we're going to start with the new characters that were introduced this season. I liked Jason as an antagonist because he didn't really understand. He was kind of a force of... He was ignorant, yet a very strong obstacle. He had really good charisma, which made it easy for him to motivate others to join his cause. Because he was so popular and Eddie wasn't, that only made it worse for our characters, for our protagonists, if you will. And then he had a close connection with Chrissy, which made him more empathetic to a lot of people because a lot of people liked Chrissy, apparently. I like how his arc kind of turns around from him being charismatic and caring about the town and albeit being a bit cringy, because like that speech he gave at the beginning about how he basically, if you remember in season 2 when Steve tried to relate basketball to his father serving in the war, you got a similar moment here where Jason compared losing a basketball game, or not compared, he used losing a basketball game to talk about the deaths of all those people in Hawkins, like as if they would care whether or not you win or lose a championship basketball game. They clearly had bigger problems. If I died right now, I don't care if my high school basketball team wins the championship. Even if I'm alive, I currently do not care what happens of my high school basketball team or anything about my high school beyond is it still standing. And even that is so low on the priority of things I care about. But rant aside, it was cringy and very on brand for his character. That was a great way to introduce like the things he cares about and how his perspective on life, like the way he views the world, the lens he views it through, rather. So for that, I think Jason was a phenomenal character in the sense that he was awful. Which segues into Chrissy. Chrissy, there's a really good video on YouTube about how, I think the title of the video is how to make your viewers care about a character in 10 minutes or something like that. How to make them care in 10 minutes. An early death done right, something like that. And maybe I'll link it or put a screenshot on screen so you know what I'm talking about. But it's a really well-made video explaining how essentially the writers, the way it works is you set up a future that's not going to happen. So when that character dies, there's a sense of loss. And I think that was really well done. And actually, Stranger Things does have a history of doing that and doing that well. And the next best example that I'll give is actually Bob from season 2, where we thought that him and Joyce were going to be together, and then he died. Probably another good example, you might argue Billy, possibly, because, forget Billy, Hopper. Granted, the death was turned around and it was made completely worthless, but if you remember at the end of season 3, when we thought Hopper died, that was a good way of doing that, where they set up for Joyce and Hopper to have that date, only for Hopper to theoretically die, right? That's another great example. And in this case, they did that, but in a 1-episode span. I don't think it was actually like 10 minutes. If it was 10 minutes, I assume he means 10 minutes of screen time. It didn't feel like she only got 10 minutes of screen time, but if that's true, then that's only more of a testament to how well written she was. And I am sad that she went, because I think she would have been a cool character, but that's the point. So now we'll talk about Eddie. Eddie, I didn't like him in the first episode, and I didn't like him in the first episode on my second watch through either. I know he becomes this great, fun guy, but even on my second watch through, I didn't really like Eddie that much overall. And maybe, right, if I acknowledge the bias, it might be because I know he's gonna die, so maybe my brain just didn't get as attached to him this time. Like, his death still sucked, or actually even more than that. Like, I wasn't that emotional on his death scene, but I was very emotional when Dustin gave his speech to Eddie's uncle. That was a very good scene. The last half hour of the season is just an emotional roller coaster, full of big moments. So credit where credit's due there. But yeah, Eddie, I do like Eddie's arc though, and I think his arc plays into a lot of. There seems to be a theme this season of characters needing to face either their fears or face their problems head on instead of running away. So I'm going to give some examples really fast. Obviously you have Eddie running away from danger in the most literal sense, with the town chasing him because he's wanted for murder, even though he didn't murder anybody, but he's running away from that problem instead of facing it. Now granted, if I was in that position, how do you explain that? I'd probably run away too. Or I don't know what I would do. But then you also have Elle refusing to confront this sort of repressed memory she has. And also, even beyond that, she's afraid she's a monster, and she's trying to repress that. And then on top of that, she's also hiding the truth from Mike, that she's actually not doing so well in California. She's struggling to fit in. Two more examples, actually, is we have Lucas being afraid to be seen as a nerd, or be seen as a part of the Hellfire Club, because he wants to be in with the popular crowd. And then you have Max. Max is afraid to confront the trauma she's dealing with over Billy, and confront the truth that maybe she's glad that Billy went and not her, but also she feels guilt over that and wishes that something bad would happen to her too. You know, assuming that is meant to be taken at face value, right? So lots of themes of, another one, Will suppressing how he really feels, or hiding how he really feels about Mike. That's another one. Mike afraid to confront the fact that he's just a mediocre guy, and Elle is a superhero in his mind, so he's afraid that she won't need him. So lots and lots of instances of characters needing to confront the truth, essentially, or confront their fears. Circling back around though, that brings me to Eddie, and even amongst the characters who go through that arc, even though I appreciate Eddie's arc, it is nice, it's not even at the top of the list for those instances in this season. So Eddie's just okay to me. And on the subject of Eddie, a lot of people want Eddie to come back in some form or fashion in Season 5. And to me, if Eddie comes back in Season 5, I'm gonna crash out, because that will be the second season in a row where we had a death that was basically cheapened or null and void, because all the value that you got from Eddie being dead in dying at the end of Season 4 is completely meaningless. It might be nice on a first watch through, but on that second watch through, it means nothing. Where on a second watch through, a character dying should mean more on a second watch through, because now these moments mean everything that a character does when you know that they're gonna die means more, because these are their last moments. Vicky, I don't have a lot to say about her. Vicky is Robin's love interest. Kind of a will they, won't they, but not really because it's one-sided. It's just we don't know if Vicky is gay or not. And that's Vicky's whole character. She's just kind of quirky and fun like Robin, but we don't know if she's gay or not. And that's just not particularly interesting to me. It will be more interesting next season, hopefully, maybe, but also there's going to be, in theory, a lot of serious stuff going on next season, so it might be overshadowed, or it might be a nice breather from all the crazy stuff that will happen in season 5. We'll have to wait and see. Argyle was very fun. I loved Argyle, and if you don't know, the writers have gone on record saying that Argyle is not returning in season 5, and Argyle's actor, who I can't remember the name of, but Argyle's actress also gone on record saying he's not going to be in season 5. And my understanding is, or at least a lot of speculation I've seen, says that Argyle only existed as a kind of a fake out, because a lot of people were seeing the pattern that I'm sure you probably, if you're watching this, you've probably seen it too. Most of the time, a new character that gets a lot of spotlight at the introduction, a character that gets introduced in a season and gets a lot of spotlight tends to die. So I think they were trying to hide the fact that Eddie was gonna die by throwing Argyle in there, and the 2 Russian characters in the Joyce Hopper side of the things. And, actually that's it. So, I think that's what they were going for, and I'm just sad that he's not going to be back next season, because he was one of my favorite characters this season. I thought he brought a lot of lightheartedness to what is a very serious season, and that's really how I feel about the California segments as a whole, but in due time, we'll get there. Vecna, or Henry, or One, very important addition to this season. I would say Vecna might be the best villain so far, or the second best villain, depending on, because I did really like the Demogorgon, but I have a Dead by Daylight bias, because Dead by Daylight was what introduced me to Stranger Things as a concept, I guess, so I have a soft spot for the Demogorgon and for Nancy and Steve, which they shine this season, but we'll get there. So, that said though, Vecna was very intimidating. He was a presence, but he was only a presence really, like a dangerous presence in Hawkins, where with the Demogorgon in season 1, you were worried that anybody could be on the chopping block. You were scared for the kids, you were scared for Hopper, you were definitely scared for Joyce. At one point, Mrs. Wheeler's daughter, Holly. At one point, Holly Wheeler was in danger in season 1. We thought the baby was gonna go, or at least it was that was the intention, I think. Anybody could have got in season 1. However, in season 4, you're only worried about the Hawkins crew, and even among the Hawkins crew, you really mostly only worried about Max. There is an instance where I was worried for Steve, and obviously at some point you end up having to worry for Eddie. I was a little worried for Erica and Lucas during the last episode with the confrontation with Jason and his group, but Vecna was the big deal. He was the omnipresent force here. The intangible force, and I think that's what makes him so intimidating, and same with the Demogorgon, but to a lesser degree, is you can't touch them because they're not here. They can attack you, but you can't attack them. You can't defend yourself, unless you count playing the music as defending yourself, but I don't know if I would count that, because you're not ridding yourself of the threat, you're simply delaying what is essentially inevitable. I guess to round off what I was saying about Vecna, phenomenal villain, possibly the best in the series. I would argue that Demogorgon was a more threatening antagonist overall. But the argument could be made for Vecna, and I would respect it, because what do I know? Angela was only important for what, an episode or two, but I thought it was fun. You gotta enjoy the lighthearted moments when you have such serious things going on, especially this season where it's like the grotesque way the characters are dying this season, and the omnipresent nature of Vecna. These small moments, like with Angela, it's just have fun with it, but she's not very important. The therapist lady, Max's therapist, I never got her name, but I don't know if she was a very good therapist, because it was a whole lot of, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to open up to me, I can't help you if you don't open up to me. And my understanding is that that's not really very effective, but this isn't like a researched opinion that I have either. This is just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Fred, I don't have a whole lot of opinions on Fred, because he wasn't around for very long. I think he was set up to be like, to make us think that he's like a replacement Jonathan, but obviously that didn't last very long, and they never really elaborated on the whole, like, I think he hit somebody with his car, or killed somebody in an accident. Unclear to me, but also not very important, because it was just a setup for him to, it's kind of like how I can't really comment on Chrissy's apparent eating disorders, because it was just in the end it was just a setup for her to die. That's how I feel about Fred's whatever that was. Next up we have, quote, Enzo, who I don't remember what his real name was, but I'm just gonna call the Russian prison guard guy, we're gonna call him Enzo, because I don't remember what his name was. And Yuri. So Enzo was cool. I appreciated him. He was kind of serious, but also he bounced off of Hopper really well. And it was nice to hear about his son, that one scene, but really he was just there to be kind of like a ping pong off of Hopper. Whatever Hopper does, he's kind of the opposite, but they have the same goal, which is bust out of this prison, right? I liked it. I didn't like the Russia subplot as a whole, but speaking of Enzo individually, without considering his place in the overall narrative, he was fun. Same with Yuri. Yuri was kind of funny, because he's just kind of like this goofy but like super manipulative like snake. So like he's not meant to be likable, but he is kind of funny. Not like laugh out loud funny though, like okay, that was funny. So that's all the new characters, at least that I could think of. I like the way the season opened up with the Hawkins Lab massacre, because it really makes you want to know what happened, and then they cut away from it, and it's your usual start to a Stranger Things season where it's like, you know, oh, here's what everybody's up to now, and look, everybody's older, because this took place during the big C word times. So like, or the filming took place, I mean, not the setting of the story. So it's like, you know, it took a long time to get it all together, so everybody's way older. I also appreciate that they opened up the California storyline with 11 saying that things were going good, but then you see that they're actually not going good. She's lying to Mike, and she's struggling to fit in. And so I saw or heard a video essay talking about like how Eleven's always struggled to fit in, and that's kind of the whole overarching subplot with her, and that's probably why she's gonna die in season 5, because she's always struggled to fit in and she doesn't belong here. And I can see it. I respect it. I also would not be surprised if Elle died, but not because of a lack of fitting in. Just because she's kind of such an important character to the series as a whole. And there's a lot of parallels that they're trying to draw between Elle and Henry. And I don't know, I could see it happening. You know, big climactic battle. She dies taking out Vecna. Everybody's saved, but there is no more Elle, there is no more Vecna, there is no more Upside Down. I will say, and I was going to get into this later, and I might still, but there was an interview with Millie Bobby Brown, which is the actor for 11, if you didn't know. And they asked her how she felt about her character's ending. And she said that she liked it, it was good. But her face did not say that. She looked like she was really dissatisfied with it. So that's more so why I personally would not be surprised if either Elle dies, or for some reason Elle has to stay in the Upside Down and seal it from the inside, or some BS like that. I'll tell you one thing I didn't like was that there's this trope specific to Stranger Things where Joyce has an out there hunch, but she's right about it, and everybody tells her that this is out there and it's crazy. And I just want Joyce to have a normal life for longer than 20 minutes. That's all I want. We don't need Joyce to go crazy every season. Like, just let the mystery open up naturally. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking because I'm tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. From most to least, my favorite plot line was the Hawkins plot line, and then I would say it's the 11 plot line, then the California plot line, and then in last place, the part I liked the least was definitely the Russia plot line, with Joyce and Hopper and the Russians. The plot line with Joyce and Hopper and Murray and the Russians in the prison or whatever, I just found it mostly unnecessary, especially towards the end. First of all, I really don't think that Hopper should have survived. I think it cheapens a lot of the effect that you got from him allegedly passing, and it does kind of, it kills it. Like, you know, Elle missing her dad, that's still really sweet and could make you emotional, but it loses some of the flavor that it would have if you didn't know, like, if Hopper really did just, he's gone from the narrative. It loses its weight, I guess is what I'm saying. And so, just right out of the gate, you've got an entire plot line built on something that shouldn't be. Just logically, narratively, storytelling perspective, like, it just shouldn't be. But I think this was their attempt. Having this side plot was probably, I would guess, their attempt at bringing him back in a less cheap way, where instead of him just, oh, it turns out I survived, it's like, but you gotta work to get him back. That's something that has been employed before in storytelling in general, is to make something less cheap. There is a cost for bringing somebody back, right? But then what you have is something that's just totally disconnected from everything else. Like, where in the other seasons, you know, what we'll call the adult plot line and the teen plot line and the kids plot line, they all revolve around the same thing. They're just all getting different information from different sources, and it's all coming together, and nobody has all the pieces to the puzzle. They've all only got like a couple of pieces each, so nothing fits together to make a whole. But you don't have that this season, and you really don't have that with the Russian subplot. It doesn't have anything to do with Vecna or One. There's just some upside down BS in Russia. We already kinda knew that that was possible because season 3 they established that that was a thing, that Russia was also trying to do upside down stuff. And the stakes were very low to me. I don't care if Hopper makes it out of here or not, because he shouldn't be alive anyway. Or you shouldn't have faked out his death in season 3. And then Joyce and Murray were kind of entertaining. Like, their dynamic was fun, and Murray was quite funny this season. I liked Murray a lot. Probably my favorite character in that section of story. But I got tired of Joyce going crazy. And Hopper is just not all that interesting by himself to me. Well, it's not that Hopper's not that interesting, it's that I'm not personally that interested in Hopper. I don't like the way he does things most of the time. So, all this amounts to, I just don't care. So, moving on to a more positive side of the coin, the California stuff was great. Even though it's third on my list, or on the lower half on my list, it is a significant jump up from the Russia stuff. I actually loved it. I thought it was a great break from the much darker side of the much darker events going on throughout this season. I feel like the California subplot brought a lot of light, like relief from the big stuff that's going on in season 4. And it was just fun watching, like, for example, when they visited Susie's house, and just Argyle being a goofball, and Jonathan's worried about his college application or lack thereof, and how he doesn't really want to do this, but he doesn't want to break it to Nancy because he doesn't want Nancy to come out there, and yada yada, and Mike just wants Elle to love him, but he's too afraid to get too close, and Will just wants to be gay, and it's like, it's just nice. It's just nice to have this kind of less important, but not irrelevant. Like, it's not irrelevant because they're trying to find Elle, and they're trying to communicate with home, and so they're connected to Elle, who is connected to the Hawkins plotline because she's connected to Vecna. And at the end of the day, the Hawkins plotline is the most important and most interesting. So, I'm not going to say that the California stuff is as important or as interesting as the other two plotlines. But for what it serves, which is brevity, it's nice. And it does its job well. Assuming that is its intended job, which I think it is. And if it's not, well, it has become that. The 11 stuff, or the 11 subplot, was great. I liked viewing into the past and seeing how 11 got to this stage in her training, I guess you could say, or like seeing what happened before we met her, essentially, and how she got to be as powerful as she is, and seeing the other numbers, and seeing how Brenner ran the lab before it was just 11. And her interactions with Henry, or One, or Vecna, whatever you want to call him. Which, I'm curious, when did you guys figure out that Henry was Vecna? Because if I remember my reactions correctly, I didn't see it coming until it was revealed. And then my second time around, I would say that I wouldn't expect most people to suspect him of being Vecna until about the scene or the scenes leading up to perhaps 11 freeing or getting that thing out of his neck or whatever, and him doing all that stuff at the lab, basically the massacre, I guess. I I wouldn't expect anyone to put 2 and 2 together until the lab stuff, or the massacre stuff. It was fun, or not fun, it was entertaining to watch Elle go through that little character arc that she went through, where she's got to confront this trauma that she has repressed in her memory to get her powers back. Like, I think it was in the same way that they tried to come up with a way to make Hopper's death not feel cheap. I think this was an attempt to make Elle getting her powers back not feel cheap. And where I don't think they really succeeded with Hopper, I do think they succeeded with Elle's powers here. Albeit, with retrospect, after watching it that second time, I felt like it was a tad rushed. But this is also already such a long season. So my favorite of the plot lines was definitely the Hawkins plot line. Watching them first try to find Eddie, figure out that Eddie's innocent, they have to hide Eddie, they can't tell anybody what's going on. That's normal, that's every season, they can't tell people what's going on. But now they've got to defend their kind of, like they gotta hide from Jason and his group and people that he has rallied to his side, because now, all the kids are associated with the Hellfire Club, and which means they're associated with Eddie, and everybody wants Eddie, and then you've got Lucas doing his thing where he's like trying to stay with the popular kids, but that means betraying his, I guess, original friends, if you want to call it that. The group, the protagonists, the kids group, whatever you want to call them. So that was entertaining, and then you have Dustin's relationship with Steve and with Eddie, and that kind of balance you got going on there. And then you have Nancy's kind of rekindling with Steve, which I'm not a fan of, but also I like Steve a lot, and I like Nancy a lot, and I like that they kind of really emphasize that Steve's really grown, but it does make you think that Steve is gonna die. And for every season you think he's gonna die, because he was supposed to die in season 1, but they liked Joe Keery too much, and then he was supposed to die in season 2, or so I've heard, and they kept him again, and then they kept him again in season 3, but he was supposed to die there, and it's like, okay, if he's just supposed to die every season, now he's either gonna die in season 5, or that whole, Joe was supposed to die, or Steve was supposed to die this season, it means nothing. If he doesn't die in season 5, it's just bullshit at that point, and I no longer care. Which might cheapen his character a little, but it really shouldn't either, because how you consume media outside of its intended viewing, like it's intended to experience Stranger Things through Netflix, right? So anything that you get from interviews or statements made on like Twitter or something, or whatever, like that shouldn't, at least from a critical perspective, you really shouldn't consider these things, because that's not intended. You're not intended to consume the story in that way. That's out of the writer's control, unless it's like an ARG or something, but that's not what this is. You're intended to watch it on Netflix in either a binge fashion or as you can fashion. Like, I know they drop it in volumes now, and I don't know if they've always done that since season 1 or when that started, because I only started Stranger Things when season 4 had just finished or was releasing. So I've already been behind the ball as far as the train goes. So I guess what I'm saying with that tangent is it doesn't actually cheapen Steve the character, but it feels like it would, just emotionally. That's how I feel about it. But that said, as far as setting Steve up to die, the whole like, Steve's grown up and he's so different now, and this this kind of will they, won't they with Nancy. Like, Nancy's still with Jonathan, so it really feels like Steve was, like, they were trying to tell us that Steve was gonna die without obviously saying Steve's gonna die. That was something I paid attention to, and I definitely felt that the first time I watched season 4. I was really worried Steve was gonna die, especially when he got pulled into that portal in the lake and the bats had him. I didn't think that he was gonna make it out of that. I'm thankful he did, but I didn't think he was going to. And just like in season 3, I really enjoyed Steve and Robin's relationship in season 4. But I also am surprised at how much I like Nancy and Robin together. Even though I think the dynamic is, like, you would expect the dynamic to be different because Steve and Nancy are so different as characters. But I guess the point that they were trying to drive home is that they're not really all so different anymore. But I still think they are, personally, because Steve's not really the investigator type like Nancy is. Steve's just kind of trying to live his life, and he always gets roped into stuff. He always gets roped into stuff. I thought it was interesting how, even though Max is hurting probably the most of everybody, she is also the kindest, like, not the nicest, but the kindest. What I mean by that is, like, you know, she's checking, like, when she sees people are in emotional pain or just in, like, not doing well, she's checking on them, and she's feeding that dog, and she, she's checking, like, she's watching, like, what's going on with Eddie and Chrissy over there. That doesn't seem good. Like, she's, even though she is hurting, she is concerning herself with other people's hurt. And I find that to be a statement about Max's character. And that speech, or whatever you want to call it, that letter to Billy scene, was so good. And it's unfortunate that I didn't really cry during that scene, which I thought for sure I was going to. And I think it's just because I've watched that scene a few times, so, like, I knew what was coming, and I think I was too braced for it in a way that I wasn't braced for. If you remember, if you watched my season 1 review, I talked about how I was surprised at how much I was crying that season, because just anytime Joyce was on screen, the emotions are so high because you feel for this person. And I think I would have gotten that same effect from Max if it weren't for the fact that I saw it coming. I didn't expect that with my rewatch in season 1, because it just, my memory wasn't there. I didn't realize how much that was going to affect me, where I knew how I was going to feel with this Max scene, and this Max stuff in general. But it was very good. It was the highlight of the season. Anytime Max is on screen, it's the highlight of the season. Probably one of, if not the best episode in the entire series at the time of my recording this, which is pre-season 5. Season 5 comes out 2 days from now as I'm recording this. So, by the time you watch this, season 5 will have been out, probably. Probably will have just watched the season finale. I don't know, I'd have to check the schedule, but, like, the finale should be on the horizon. And, yeah, I mean, just beautiful. And then to see how Max went out, that plan she had was solid to me. Like, it's my mind. I'm gonna take the fight somewhere more positive. It'll be harder for him to manipulate me there. I thought it was a good idea. That said, she stood no chance if it weren't for 11, and even with 11 it ended up meaning nothing, and, it was sad. It was sad what happened to her when she's talking about, I will say, I did tear up for that, and get emotional for that, when she's like, I can't feel anything, I can't see anything, like, and then she goes, and it's like, oh my god, that's so sad, and they're playing the saddest frickin' song possible. So, good on you, writing team and directing team, for that, because that was a great pick, and the shots were done really well, and it was just so good. It was so good. When I seen Jason's foot break that Walkman, I was like, oh no, this is so this is so messed up, man. Max don't deserve this, man. She's like one of the best characters in the whole series. It's just the way it is. It's good writing, baby. um, and speaking of which, we can point out the fact that they did try that thing that we were talking about earlier in the video where I said, you know, you set up a future that's not going to happen. And they did kind of do that right at the very last minute before everything went down, where it's like, oh, after this, you know, do you want to go to the movies? And she draws the little picture of them at the movies, and it's like, oh, man, because I know what's going to happen. Now, I do want to give a little theory I have, and it's not a well thought out theory. I don't have any evidence. This is just off the top of my head. I think it would be cool if how Max contributes next season is, yeah, she's not conscious here, like with us in the real world or in the right side up, but maybe she can help people in their consciousness. Like maybe she's developed some kind of upside down powers from Elle bringing her back. That could be cool. We'll just have to wait and see. And on the subject of 11, that speech that Mike gave to 11, I thought was really good. I got emotional for that. And Dustin's speech to Eddie's uncle, I got emotional for that. So yeah, just the last half hour of this season was just so emotionally charged. And one thing I do want to say, actually, speaking of the end of the season, is what is so important about Mrs. Wheeler? I can't remember her first name, so I'm just going to call her Mrs. Wheeler. We all know who I'm talking about. Mike's mom, Nancy's mom, Holly's mom. There is an interview out there somewhere, and I don't remember the specifics of it, where someone in the cast, or maybe it was the Duffer Brothers, says that Holly is going to be really important next season. And I don't know why she would be important. That seems like it could be just them throwing red herrings out there for the public, because, you know, we all love to, not we all, but when I say we all, I mean like people who are on the internet and view Stranger Things. People love to try and like predict and spoil. I don't know what the relevance of Holly will be. I do remember in Nancy's vision with Vecna, Nancy does say, or no, excuse me, Nancy does say to the group something about like her family dying or being hurt or something. So maybe that's the relevance that we're talking about here, but I don't know. I mean, she gets her own promotional poster and everything. Not Holly, but Mrs. Wheeler, I mean. And she always gets these super cinematic shots, and I just don't get it. What's so important? Mike was still not really all that great this season. Actually, he was an awful boyfriend and an awful friend most of the season, but I think he came back around at the very end, or at least tried to. And he's probably going to be really important next season, I would guess. Dustin was just classic Dustin. There's not really a whole lot to say about him that it hasn't been said the last 3 seasons, you know. He's just a fun, lovable guy, and he kind of thinks he knows everything, or whenever he is right, he makes a big deal of it. Nancy was kind of a badass this season. That scene where she was at the gun store and Jason was trying to tell her like about her gun, and he's holding the gun and she's like, let go. Like, ooh, stand up for yourself, girl. That's what I'm talking about. Shoot this man in the store. Not actually, but Erica too. Erica was like, she was good this season. I think it's just that the problem is there's so much going on this season that like these really important characters that have good moments are just overshadowed by crazy moments. And you know, Vecna is such an iconic character. and I don't mean from like lore-wise, like Dungeons and Dragons. No. I just mean for Stranger Things specifically. Like, he's a phenomenal villain. He's going to be remembered, not just because he's probably the final villain, if not some crazy cosmic horror Lovecraftian entity the size of space-time. Like, if not that, it's Vecna, Vecna, I mean, he's the first time we've lost. Like, really, truly lost. So, he's so memorable. And so anything to do with him gets a lot of memorability. And, like, Nancy had some interaction with him, especially with, like, the whole, oh, this is my identity thing. Like, this is what happened. And this is what's going to happen in the future. This is what I'm trying to do. Like, I mean, I would have thought Nancy was a goner. I probably did the first time I watched it, but I don't remember. But the second time watching, like, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought that Nancy was going to die when she got pulled in and Vecna was doing his whole mumbo-jumbo with her, because I wouldn't have known that Max was going to be, like, the permanent, like, this is the target. I would have assumed that he would have just moved on to somebody else, and it was Nancy. And so I thought Nancy was done for. But that to say, Erica didn't really have any interaction with Vecna, and she didn't really have any interaction with Max. Erica was just there existing. The most iconic thing she did all season was tell Jason off. To my memory, at least. Oh, actually, no, the most memorable thing she did was probably the stuff at the beginning with the D&D. Will, there wasn't really a whole lot to say about either, because the whole thing is just that he has feeling, at least my interpretation, and there's some bias there because I am of that LGBT community myself, right? But just to me, it just seemed like the whole thing with Will is just that, oh, he's gay. Okay. I'm sorry, it's not particularly important to me because Will's interest as a character comes from his connection to the Upside Down, and now we know to Vecna. So his love life just isn't that important to me. Really, none of theirs is. I mean, Nancy's been doing this since season 1, this back and forth between Steve and Jonathan, and just not being, like, very particularly loyal partner, I would say. So, yeah, Will's love life is unimportant to me. Same with Mike's, but at least in this instance, Mike's love life was kind of more relevant because Mike is trying to get to Elle, and he is beating himself up about, like, not saying I love you and stuff. Not a lot to say about Susie. Her house was, like, that episode was fun. I want Joyce to have a normal life. I'm tired of her, like, overdone replay every season. Like, oh, I have this theory because this happened. Like, it's to the point where it's like, my paper clips won't clip paper. There's gotta be, something preventing the paper from, and it's in the Upside Down, they're back, I can feel it, like, and then she'll be fucking right, and it's like, okay, look, I'm tired of it, once, it was great, it led to a lot of emotions for me. Twice, okay, she's paranoid because, this just happened, like, a year ago, like, it's a big deal, this is fair. 3 times, okay, look, this is getting overdone. And then 4 times, it's like, I'm tired of it. Give Joyce something else going on, please. And I guess the only 2 characters I have left to talk about that I haven't really said anything about is the 2 doctors, Dr. Brenner and Dr. Owens. And I like that they're kind of like a good cop, bad cop kind of thing going on, but not really that even, because, I mean, Brenner seems to be the one with all the, like, know-how for, like, 11 to get her powers back and, like, make them stronger, and it seems like Dr. Owens is just kind of like, yeah, I know a little bit about the Upside Down. I can't really help too much, but like, I'm a nice guy. I can get you your connections. I can be your connections guy. But I don't want anything to happen to him. I don't know if he died in season 4. I don't think he did. And if he did, that's a real bummer. I'd like him to come back in season 5, but I don't know if he's alive or not. I can't remember. So that's about all I have to say for this season. It was very good. I will say, overall, it's not as good as season 1 to me personally. So I think the way I would rank the seasons from 1 through 4, I would say it goes. Season 2 was my least favorite. It was still good, but it was my least favorite of the 4. And then season 3, because it brought a lot of, it mixed it up quite a bit, enough for me to really enjoy it. I feel like it didn't really take itself as seriously overall. It was just, it was less of a mystery and more of just a fun ride. And then season 4, you brought a lot of that mystery element back, and it was a nice kind of return to form, but it wasn't 100% a return to form. And there was some more action, and there was a nice mix-up of like you've got some brevity but some seriousness, and Vecna was like an omnipresent thing, so you've got a lot of similarities there between Vecna and the Mind Flare from season 3. And you've got basically everything that season 3 did, season 4 did better, but it didn't do everything that season 1 did as well as season 1 did it. So it's kind of like a nice middle ground between season 3 and season 1 to me. Which brings me to season 1, where everything hadn't been overdone yet. Everything was still fresh, and there was a mystery, and you had 3 different storylines to follow, but they were all relevant and related to each other, and you had your fun moments in all of them, but you had your serious moments in all of them. And personally, other than Hopper to a degree, I found all the characters to be likable. I guess in Jonathan too. Jonathan's always been kind of like not really all that interesting character to me. So that's where I put season 4. Thank you for listening. I can't wait to watch season 5 with you guys. I haven't decided if I'm going to wait for the whole thing to come out and then watch it and then make a video, or if I'm going to watch it as it comes out and then make a video after the season finale, which would mean that it would get to you guys quicker. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'll see where the channel's at, and if the channel's not just absolutely jumping, I'll probably wait and just do a overall review of season 8 and binge it all after it's done. So if that is the case, then you guys well, either way, you guys are going to see season 5 review next year. You're not going to see it anytime this year, that's for sure. But yeah, thanks for coming to listen, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.